Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Chairman.
Welcome back to the Chairman's Perspective, where Memphis and Shelby County are certainly on the move. I'm your host, Van Turner Jr., along with my co-host, DC.
Sitting right here in the chair, Mr. Chairman.
And today we have the great Councilman and Budget Chairman Martavius Jones in the studio with us. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back right here on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN!
R&R on Sports is proud to be on Sirius XM.
So what's R&R stand for?
Real talk and relevant sports issues.
It's racial and relative. We're brothers from the South. We can relate.
R&R on Sports on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
And welcome back to the Chairman's Perspective. We have a great show. We are here with none other than Martavius Jones.
That's right. The one
City
and only
Councilman. And I'm here with DC, my co-host.
Yes, sir. How we doing, Mr. Chairman?
And we have a great show planned. I'm so happy to be here with Councilman Jones. So, Councilman Jones, I recall when you were first on the school board.
That goes back a while, Mr. Chairman.
That was back in the day.
It does.
So take us through this journey known as Martavius Jones, starting with the school board up to now being on the city council.
And the budget chair, too, I think, right?
The budget chair. And they passed the budget unanimously just a few days ago.
Wow.
So congrats on that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Let me ask, now, did you want to get him when he went to Carver High School, too? I don't know if you want me to throw that in there.
We could take it back to the Cobra days if we want to.
I bet I put Carver on that guy.
But I'm a warrior. Central warrior.
Oh,
no.
man.
I went to White Station University, by the way.
The
but
high
that's okay.
school.
You know, yeah.
The high school, right.
That's what they say.
Oh,
yeah.
That's what they say.
Go ahead, Councilman. What's up with you?
Man, I'm doing well. Thank you all for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. Man, I tell you, it's been a journey. Unlike you, Mr. Chairman, I didn't have a political science background. I didn't go to law school. So how I ended up in politics was totally by mistake. But I was around. I had the fortune of being around people who were tired of sitting on their hands and complained about what the situation was in Memphis and trying to do something about it. So that's how I got on the school board. That's how I got here at the end of the day.
You were first elected to the school board in what year?
I was first appointed.
Appointed.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
I was appointed.
That's right.
So I was Tamika Hart's treasurer
That's right.
in 2004.
Nice lady. Nice lady.
Look, that was my partner in crime. Partner in crime. I was her treasurer. So she decided to run for the school board.
Yep.
You know, my friend Cardell, Orrin,
Right.
Darrell Cobbins, and
right.
Eric Robertson, they had formed New Path.
That's right.
And they were essentially her campaign team. So I was at a school board meeting because at that time I had just gone independent as a financial advisor. And I was trying to get business from Memphis City Schools. I was going to Shelby County government trying to get business from Shelby County government. I was going to Memphis City Council.
Yeah, that's right.
Trying to get business from them. But school board meeting started at 5:30, so I didn't have to miss work.
Yeah.
County commission meeting started at 1:30. City council started at 3:30.
Yeah, I missed work.
I had to miss work. So I had to pay the bills.
That's right. You can't hustle and
So I
flow
walked
if
out
you're doing that.
Yeah, no. I walked out of a school board meeting one night. Cardell said, "Hey, there's a woman running for school board. Will you be a treasurer?" Tamika Hart. And that's how I got into it. So, being around that group back in 2004, she was elected 2004, sworn in January 2005. So that November or October 2005, there was a vacancy on the school board. I've been going to school board meetings anyway.
Yeah.
So I said, look, I looked up the makeup of the board. Tamika was a lawyer. You have Jeff Warren as a doctor. You had Sarah Lewis, who's a former educator. Stephanie Gatewood, who was a community organizer. You didn't have anybody with a finance background.
That's right.
So I said, that's what I bring to the table. And that's how I got appointed.
So you got appointed in 05?
January 06.
06.
But
06.
November 06 ran unopposed. November 2010 ran unopposed. So I got competition this year, but got my fingers crossed.
We here. We'll get into that down the road, but we here.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
So Councilman Jones, so take us from the transition. Why do you go from something that I recall you, and I know you still are very passionate about, which is education, how do you go from there to the what informs you of your decision to go from the Memphis City schools to the Memphis City Council?
Man, actually, there was a step in there called a loss to your colleague, Mr. Reginald Milton.
Oh, wow.
I ran for county commission in 2014.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I do remember
I
that.
did.
Yes, sir. I remember that.
And, you know, I mentioned this the other day. I lost to Mr. Milton, and I could not have picked a greater person to represent me on the county commission and everybody else in that district on the county commission. And I made this joke the other night. I said, and I still think about it, and this is true. I actually felt worse waking up the day after Donald Trump won.
Wow.
Versus the day after I lost.
Hey, brother, I think we all had to get up that morning.
Everybody woke up and said, wait a minute.
You know, somebody who's had the agony of defeat.
He won?
Agony of defeat in politics, but I felt worse when somebody else won, when he won versus when I lost.
I want to jump into this thing. You are now the current budget chairman for the city of Memphis, and you've got of course, the mayor in a city form of government in Memphis is, we consider the mayor to be the strong piece, and of course the council be a little bit subservient to the mayor. But now you guys still got pretty much equal authority, and so you still have to approve his budget.
Right.
And as a budget chair, you have just I don't know if this has ever happened before, has it? Unanimously?
Yes.
First reading?
Yeah, it has been, and I have to give credit to my predecessor's budget chair and Chairman Turner's current colleague, Edmund Ford Jr.
Oh, okay.
So he served as a budget chair.
Right.
Yeah,
yes,
he
sir.
served as a budget chair in the previous 3 budget seasons that I was on the city council. And my job coming in was just not to mess up the precedent that he'd set. He'd done such
I don't think he messed up.
He did such a great job. I would have look, those were big shoes to fill, and
Y'all make anybody mad?
we really didn't. But
Yeah.
you know what I am disappointed in. I supported the budget, but it was not a budget that's bold enough.
Oh, wow.
I think that elected officials, try to play it safely.
Yeah.
That's how this budget was. This is an election year. And
I heard you say that. I don't know if it was in the commercial or if it was on one of the spots on the local news, but I heard you say it was a safe budget year because of election
year. It's safe. We are facing, how can any of us realistically operate on less money today than 10 years ago? But our general fund tax rate is less today than it was 10 years ago. And so I see that it's not making investments in ourselves. I don't see those as expenses. You know, I think about somebody, I think I may have saw something on Facebook talking about when was the last time somebody drank out of a water fountain in any of our parks? It's probably because they're broken.
Yeah.
So basic stuff like that cosmetic stuff that is public facing, to be safe and to get reelected, there was no initiative to take care of basic stuff like that. You go to community centers, you go to some golf courses, clubhouses, the towel dispensers, not off the walls, no soap dispensers. So we're not making those type of investments to get reelected.
My God.
That's interesting. And you mentioned before that today, this is an election year, so I guess the whole thought was not to rock the boat.
Not to rock the boat. So, you know, we already had the MLG&W, so we pushed that can down the road. So we still have to face the infrastructure MLG&W.
Yeah, at some point.
At some point.
Yeah.
Our solid waste fund, we've gone to this regular pickup, and, you know, that's one of the frustrating things that I found on being the council is that we really can't get things done on the legislative branch in the timetable you would want them to get done. I can recall, and I'm going to break this all.
I want you to hold it right there.
Yeah.
Councilman, hold it right there. Let's take a quick break. We want to come back in, and Mr. Chairman, we want to come back in and let him hit us. I think what I just saw in his eyes, I saw a twinkle in his eye, this solid waste piece. If you can't pick up the trash sometimes on time, if you can't do it on a regular basis, then we got issues in our community, right? That's right. So hold right there. We'll be right back here on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Jazz, America's own original musical art form. When did it start? Who were and are some of the major players? How do you distinguish what kind of jazz you're listening to? We talk about the great and lesser-known artists, songs and tunes, the instruments, and the social impact jazz has had on world culture since its beginning at the start of the 20th century.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Hey, this is Martavius Jones, City Councilman for Super District 8 of the Memphis City Council. And when I want to stay informed on all things Shelby County, I check out the Chairman's Perspective on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
And we're back on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am Van Turner Jr., your host, along with my co-host, DC.
I'm right here, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Councilman Jones, you were just right about to, as they say back in the day, drop some knowledge on solid waste. Tell us about solid waste in the city of Memphis.
Okay. So on your MLG&W bill, you have a solid waste fee. So that pays for the sanitation work to pick up the cart on the side of the street. Now, and the cart service, and I have to, there was a change in the solid waste department. That division was broken out from under public works. So it's its own separate division. And there was a gentleman by the name of Albert Lamar who has been hired to do that. Native Memphian. I had been in the military for a while. Came in and, out the gate really did some good things. But I go back to I call it my first semester, if you will, first 6 months on the city council. And I found out that the curbside pickup is what the issue is. It's not the cart. It's the curbside. So when you, springtime, you cutting your hedges, you putting in the front of your house.
Grass clippings, all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. So all of that stuff, too big for the automatic picker with the automatic cart retrieval truck. So the schedule was to pick up within 21 days. So let's say you threw something out on January 1st. Well, it's holiday, January 2nd.
Okay.
21 days from that is going to be January 23rd.
Yeah.
21 days from that is going to be what? We got to add 21. So
Yeah,
it could be the 14th. Right.
Yeah, February or something. Yeah, that's right.
Right. 21 days from that could be, as opposed to a schedule, my cart pickup is on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Versus saying a set schedule, the 1st and the 3rd, the 2nd and the 4th, having some schedule like that people know, as opposed to cutting it down, putting that out there, and you got to wait 15, 18 days in order to do that. So we finally have that. But that's something that I've been crowing about since my first year on the council. So we finally have that now. But in order to fund it, those solid waste fees have to go up. And they haven't gone up in a while. So those are some of the, be honest with folks and say, look, if you want and everybody remembers when Memphis was the cleanest city in America.
Absolutely.
But that designation was
2 days a week we used to get our cans picked up. Remember, they were cans back then. Remember the old metal silver cans back in the day?
I remember.
And you could have them in the backyard around the corner of Miss Sally's house. You going to get that can picked up, Doc.
Yeah.
But Memphis, but I think that people are so reminiscent of those days and want those days back.
Right.
I think they're willing to pay for it. I think they're willing to pay for it.
I agree.
To have a clean city again.
Right.
To have a clean city. So
absolutely,
those are just some of the fees that nobody wants to broach because it's an election.
It's a safe budget.
It's a safe budget.
Right.
Safe budget, Mr.
Safe
Chair.
budget.
Right. That's right.
And you're listening to the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
So, Councilman Jones, let's talk MLG&W. Right now, today, we have individuals within the city who are without power. I know this is a big concern of yours. Tell us what are your thoughts about MLG&W and moving forward with the power outages and what we can do to better build up the infrastructure.
We got two things going on at the same time, and I think that these two matters are somewhat conflated. We talk about the whole arrangement with the TVA, and then we talk about the whole infrastructure. The infrastructure part of it has nothing to do with TVA. If we were getting our power, there's an organization called, I think it's called Mid-Continental Inter-Service, something like that. Yeah. MISO is the abbreviation for it. So even if we were getting our power from MISO right now, we still would have to have the infrastructure in place. These are the transformers, this other equipment of names I don't know that really get power to people's homes. So that's the part that we work on, and we have to address that regardless of whether we're getting our power from MISO, TVA, or any other source. The way that that's paid for is by Memphians. So I sit on the PSAT Power Supply Alternatives team, something like that. There are other community people who are part of this, looking at the supply side of it, where we get it from, TVA, whether that's our best alternative here. So we're studying that issue. But when we talk about the infrastructure part, that part is just borne by people in Shelby County. Right. So when we talked about the rate adjustments or the proposals that came before us that were voted down repeatedly, I don't know whether or not that was because of an election year. Very well could have been.
Safe election year again.
Safe election year again. Right. But those are just, MLG&W had a slight increase, maybe my second year on the council. Yeah. That was Mr. Collins, Mr. Jerry Collins. That was his last year as the president of MLG&W. He came before council, said, I need this increase. We need this to improve the infrastructure. My colleague said, well, you're about to go out the door. Let's wait till somebody comes in. Mr. Young comes in, says that we need this, and it was voted down.
Gotcha.
So there has not been so that we had that small rate increase. Prior to that, the last increase, we were in the previous decade.
Wow.
But that's where the improvement for infrastructure comes in. We got a lot of trees.
We need more dollars.
We need more dollars. We need more dollars.
And we're going to come back to this, but you said Shelby County because MLG&W services Memphis and Shelby County.
All of the municipalities, right?
We're going to come back to that, but let's briefly, before this segment ends, discuss de-annexation. So Southwind and Winddyke are out. They dropped the mic, we out. What does that mean for the bottom line of the city of Memphis?
Well, you have, in certain areas, they were able to identify the income that comes in from those areas. They were able to identify the expenses. We look at it from our personal income standpoint. You get a check. If my got more expenses than my paycheck allows, I'm in the red.
That's right.
If you got more income, you've managed your expenses a little bit better, I'm in the black.
Yeah.
I may have voted for a couple of de-annexations if we were in the red, meaning that we were spending more than we took in. But when we talk about some areas, South Cordova, Winddyke, Southwind, we were in the black, my friend.
Yeah.
So we were actually.
You gave the black away?
We gave the black away.
Lord have mercy.
We gave, and my thing is, why give those residents who have the most ability to pay a pass on paying taxes into the city of Memphis? So they can't afford lobbyists, and they don't have relationships with their state reps or state senators who may be in the majority party to get stuff done. But I think about my my high school roommate and my college classmate, high school classmate, college classmate. He lived out at Hacks Cross in Lawrence. He moved out there about 92, 93. I was living in Nashville at the time. You used to have to get off of Ridgeway.
That's right.
To get all the way out there.
That was the country.
Take it to Winchester and drive it all the way to Hacks Cross. Hacks Cross was one lane in each direction. That Honda dealership, Nissan, none of that was there. BP,
Krispy Kreme wasn't
BP at the corner wasn't even there. It's probably one of the first establishments there. It was there before the Cracker Barrel.
Right.
Pitch black when I used to ride out there, man. But I still think about how Hacks Cross and everything was widened and brought modern to get out there. Those monies, that infrastructure that made Southwind attractive, none of those houses have septic tanks.
Right.
And I wonder how attractive would those houses would have been with septic tanks.
I know where you're going.
Instead of the infrastructure that Memphis put in.
Memphis, we did it to ourselves.
We did it to ourselves.
Mr. Chairman.
Brother, you make a good point. I know you have other good points to make, but we're going to have to take a brief moment, a brief pause for the calls, and we'll be right back with Councilman Martavius Jones.
Chairman. The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The off-year electorate, the midterm electorates, are older, less diverse, more conservative. You have two electorates fighting for the future of this country. And what I'd say to your viewers and people listening in is, you know what? You got to stop that older, less diverse electorate from funking around with your future.
Funking up your airwaves and jamming the good information in your ear. Once again, it's Funky Politics.
Funky Politics. KUDZUKIAN.
And we are back with the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, sitting here along with my host, Mr. Chairman Van Turner, sir.
Yes, sir.
You know, I got more power in this room than MLGNW in some of these neighborhoods right now. I'm just going to tell it like it is right now. When you talk about power, I got a budget chairman and I got a chairman of a county commission. You know, I was in Germantown one day and I saw a Memphis City truck. One of the emergency, it's got the E on it, so I know what division that is. And they're out there servicing the traffic lights. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And I looked that thing up. Apparently, all these traffic lights that are out there, right? With some of these municipalities, we've got agreements with them to manage or to maintain the traffic light systems out there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I thought that was weird. And I'm like, well, why would a city truck be? Then I just let it go until I read further and said, oh, I see. Mr. Chairman, consolidation at some point. I mean, I know the burbs don't want it, the birds don't want it, but some folks need it. Where we at, man? Where are we at on this thing?
You know, I think that Nashville is Nashville because it's not just Nashville, it's the Nashville-Davidson metropolitan government.
That's right.
Now, one of the things that I interject, and I lived in Nashville from 93 to 99, you still have incorporated cities.
Yeah, little small towns.
Within Belmead is one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that were to happen here, you still would have your Germantowns, your Colliervilles.
So why are they
your
fighting it
Bartletts.
then? Why?
And my thing is, why? I'm almost to the point, why do they even have a say in it? Because those cities would not be affected. But what keeps consolidation from happening
is their vote.
Is the dual vote requirement, a dual referendum. So there has to be a referendum in the city of Memphis, and there has to be a referendum for everybody outside the city limits of Memphis, including those municipalities.
Did they not at one time, Mr. Chairman, say they tried to get to what they said unincorporated Shelby County, and they said, "Oh no, that's not it. No, it's everybody." Because I think there was a case at one point.
That was a federal lawsuit filed.
Yep,
and that's what it argued, that they should not get a vote. Only unincorporated Shelby County outside of the Memphis city limits should get the vote. And I can tell you, I mean, it's no secret. If that was the vote, we would have consolidated.
It would have passed, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
it would have passed.
I mean, what's the deal, guys? I mean, it's not the schools anymore. Because
right,
we got one school, we got one district. Well,
it's not.
I'm sorry, we got 10 districts.
We got 7.
but we got 7. But now we got one district when it comes to Shelby County because you guys fund them all.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got
We
fund one of them.
We fund all 7.
Yeah, all 7. So it's a telltale story.
Right.
It's worked in other areas of our country, but we will never. We haven't seen the light of day here in Memphis and Shelby County.
We haven't. Now, I will say though, is that shortly after it failed the last time that it failed, I and a couple of more people, there's actually a federal lawsuit, and Chairman Turner, you got to tell me, there's a legal term. If you can bring something back, is that with prejudice or without prejudice?
So it's without prejudice to bring it back.
So there was something that went to the Court of Appeals because there was a challenge to the dual referendum requirement. And so it's without prejudice that it's
without prejudice. That means you can bring it back.
So we can bring it back. What the dual challenge, in the scenario that I always talk about consolidation, this doesn't make any sense. If all 650,000 people that live in Memphis voted for it, but then everybody outside the city limits caught the sleeping flu and slept through all of early voting except one person who was out of town who came back on election day and voted no. His one vote would trump the will of 650,000 people because of the dual referendum requirement.
And let's put that into a broader perspective. We just talked about MLGNW and infrastructure. MLGNW supplies power for the entire county.
That's
for
right.
the entire county, yes.
It's consolidated. It's consolidated power, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right here on Chairman's Perspective, it's consolidated power.
And one of the arguments when I was making about the MLGNW infrastructure piece was when we were expanding outside the city limits, we had to put the new transformers and poles and all these other things that I don't know the names for. We had to put those in place with the new money instead of putting them in Orange Mile.
Right.
And in South Memphis and
Right.
North Memphis.
Right.
So you can have equipment that's probably 50, 60 years old because we were expanding and the money that's being generated had to go to those new areas.
And some of those new subdivisions, they do have the underground utilities. We've talked to some. We didn't talk to John Zane, but we talked to a builder who said that, look, there are some out there. Jerry Collins said it, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's some areas in our county that have underground utilities.
Yeah, the new ones,
These newer subdivisions, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But they're not new in your district. They're not new new in 8. They're not new in your district, though.
So when a storm hits, the power doesn't go off. The lines are underground.
Trees don't fall on the lines.
Trees don't fall on the lines. There are no lines. And so the city built all this infrastructure, and then when a community de-annexes, you pay for all of that, but now you don't enjoy all of the things that went into attracting taxpayers to that area, and that can pay taxes. Now they're gone.
They're gone.
They don't contribute
No.
to the infrastructure that you all built.
No.
How many millions are we losing? How many millions on the table? Just the ballpark figure that you've heard.
I want to say one area might have been 3. Off the top of my head, we might be close to about 10.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I want to say.
But it's going to cost the county probably 3 times that, because I know the sheriff
got to pick it up.
The sheriff is asking for about 50 officers, I think, or 50 deputies, right, Mr.
Right.
Chairman?
That's right.
To eventually to service his area. And I can assure you that at 50 deputies, you're probably talking about quite a bit more in terms of salary and benefits. That tent's going to be eating up pretty good.
And here's the other part that's missing too, that I always tell folks from a Memphis standpoint. Of the money that goes into Shelby County government, 60% of that comes from Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that was a big rub of mine was when I was on the school board and we had MPD officers in Memphis City schools, and we had to pay for them. But you had Shelby County deputies in the former Shelby County schools.
Oh wow!
And so Memphians, in essence, were paying 60% of those sheriff deputy salaries, but couldn't get the benefit of them being in Memphis schools for free. So that's that dual government, that two-headed monster that we have.
Well, I mean, you've cited the court proceeding. I'm sure one day it will be revisited. And I just think that there are efficiencies with consolidations. And we already work together on many things. It's not just the Shelby County Airport or the Memphis Airport. It's
right.
the Memphis and Shelby County Airport.
That's right, yeah.
You look at MATA, now they're asking us for an allocation because MATA goes outside of the city.
Don't stop at the city limits.
So, I mean, there are a number of ways that we're already working together, and it just makes sense perhaps on down the road for us to take a new look at it, a fresh look at it, consolidate it.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Another thing that I think we need to look at, Mr. Chairman, you and I, from this standpoint, we have code enforcement that's joint city, county.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to look at edge, joint city, county, more so from there being a department of city and county government versus an independent
entity
in and of itself.
That's a whole nother show.
Happy back. We're talking about that.
That's a whole nother show there.
Now, I'm Morehouse. Councilman Jones is Howard, but it's all HBCU.
Oh, you better believe it,
all
man.
HBCU love.
You
I'm
better
Memphis
believe
State. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't count. I don't count. Take us out here, Mr. Chairman.
It's been a great show. We've enjoyed having you with us, Councilman Jones.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely come back anytime you want to come back. And you're listening to The Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective podcast on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey, I'm your host, Cynthia Daniels.
And I'm your co-host, Williams Brack. And Grindset takes a deep dive into the mentality of the entrepreneur in Memphis.
This show unpacks the entrepreneurial journey. What's your Grindset?
So make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grindset on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Mr. DC, I think we had a great one.
Yes, sir, we did. We had not only a gentleman who helped set policy on the city side, but he was a great representative on the education piece too, when he sat on the school board. He took some big hits. But he stood up really tall, and he stood up tall for a man who's about 6 foot tall. But he stood up real tall. And a Howard guy too, by the way. I'm not going to talk about him.
He's a Howard man and an Omega man.
We're going to talk about a Howard man, as I say. But I tell people all the time, 1911 was a good year. It was a good year. They made a lot of good men, and I tell you what, I think Martavius Jones is going to be one who's got a future that's brighter than bright. Both of you guys. I see in the future, Doc. I see down the road.
Well, certainly hats off to Councilman Jones for serving as budget chair and passing that unanimous budget on the first go at it.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful conversation regarding MLG&W, solid waste, de-annexation, consolidation, just a wealth of information.
All the Asians.
We certainly have to have Councilman Jones back. It was a great show.
Yes, sir. We'll see you again right here on The Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Executive producer, Shelby County Commission's Van Turner. Hosted by Chairman Van Turner Jr. and Darrell DC Catron. Recorded at KUDZUKIAN Studios. Directed, produced, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.